Hey everyone, thanks for learning to play games. My name is Lance, and in today's video, this is something a little bit different. I've had requests over the years to do a top 5 video or all kinds of different videos and those kind of genres and different things. So I figured I'd take a stab at it this year, as I've been thinking about this for a while, and I've tried doing it in the past, and it's just one of those things where I'm so bogged down with everything, I just don't get around to it. So I figured, why not? Let's give it a try and see what you guys think of this one. So with that being said, this is a new kind of format for me, so I'm going to see how this goes, and I'm going to outline a couple of things first off. So in the description, I'm going to have a full list of pretty much all of the games that I've played this year. Now this list is going to exclude any Kickstarter games that I have worked on that are prototypes that are not released yet. So anything that I've worked on, is a lot of the videos going through this and compiling this list is kind of sad, because it's about half and a little bit more, maybe probably half than half of the amount of Kickstarter videos that I do versus the amount of teaching and other types of videos I do, which I might have to figure out a way to balance that out, since my channel is about teaching. But that out of the way, I will have a full list of all the games that I've pretty much played this year that have come out this year or close to coming out this year. And I'm sure a couple of these that have gotten onto that list have been released maybe the year prior or something like that. But pretty much everything that I'm going to have on the list that I've played will, I believe, have come out this year. So let me know in the comments down below, of course, if I've gotten some of those things wrong. A couple of them I know right off the top of bat that aren't, but some of them have just been the fact that I've been late to the game with some of these things. Some of them I've been wanting to get to for a little while. But with that being said, I'm going to give you my top 5 games for this year that I've played. The games that I'm the most excited about or have really enjoyed playing, that I would recommend potentially adding to your list if you agree with some of the things that I like. So surprisingly, pretty much I think all of these games almost are miniatures-based games, or have a lot of miniatures in them. As I'm a big miniatures guy, I love minis, I love seeing all the detail and just the amount of detail that they can get into such a small model. And then, of course, I have a background in painting. I used to paint for Warhammer, enjoyed playing Warhammer back in the day. And so eventually, hopefully, I will at some point get to actually painting these. Who knows? Probably not. It's a pipe dream, but one of those things that I would like to do at some point. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and move into this now. I'm going to list the top 5 games that I've played this year in order, from lowest up to my very top pick. And then I'll also throw in, I think, 3 honorable mentions after that. So the games that I almost made the list and for various reasons maybe did not, and I'll try to explain those as I get into those as well. So let's go ahead and head into it at number 5. Resident Evil 3 from Steamforged Games has scared its way onto my number 5 slot. So with this one, this was a Kickstarter a couple years ago or a year ago, and they finally shipped it earlier this year. And this one has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. I liked Resident Evil 2, so I was excited to see what they were going to do with this one, and it did not disappoint. They did listen to the fans and tried to make up with some of the problems that happened with Resident Evil 2, especially with the boards and the tiles and that. And they listened to us and they improved them for Resident Evil 3. Now, of course, it's not perfect. There was some other issues that came up, and there's definitely some issues with quality. I'm not a huge fan of the way that the cards were cut and things like that. They just don't feel good in your hands. But the game experience itself, the rule set is solid, and I have really enjoyed this game so far. And I'm always wanting to sit down and play more. Of course, as a content creator for the channel, I don't get that chance as much as I would like to, but this is definitely one that on my free time I would love to be able to throw down and play a little bit more. I enjoyed playing through the very first campaign mission in this one that I filmed for you, that you can find a link to at the bottom in the comment section. But this is one that I really enjoyed for a couple of reasons. First off, they were able to capture the feel of Resident Evil very well in these games. Both this one, Resident Evil 2, and I got a chance to try out the new one that was on Kickstarter just a little while ago, or GameFound, one of the two, for Resident Evil. And each one of these games has captured the feel of Resident Evil very well. Resident Evil is a survival game about moving your way through different areas, having unknown enemies, whether it's zombies or other monsters or monstrosities or mutations coming at you, and you're going to have to deal with them by managing the resources that you have, not always going in guns blazing and torching everything that you have, but potentially making hard decisions about, okay, do I spend the ammunition killing this zombie, or do I simply move around them, as this is not going to be an area that I'm going to go into again, and maybe I can just close the door behind myself and be safe. And they've captured that very well in this game. The way that the reaction system works and how you have to choose and spend bullets and manage your bullets and different ammunition counts, as you're definitely not going to potentially have enough. Now, of course, if you roll really good, you probably will, but if not, of course I don't, as you've seen in some of the videos that I've done with this one, you're just not going to be able to do that. So you're going to have to make decisions about, okay, I'm going to go around this zombie and, try to cut them off at the pass, or lead them into this room where then I can close that door and hopefully not have to deal with them again. Now, of course, there's different encounters and events that are going to happen that might open those doors back up, or those zombies might come out at you anyways, or all kinds of other crazy things. And the bosses in this are truly terrifying. They are definitely going to make you think very hard about how you want to approach them, and whether or not you're going to be able to live through it will be up to you and how you do things. Now, of course, the dice have roles to play in this, and it is a luck-based game with the dice, but that being said, this is definitely one that I've enjoyed playing this year, and will hopefully look at getting onto the table more in the future, until I get Resident Evil 1, of course, and then that one is going to be the top game on my area for a while as well. Really enjoyed some of the changes they made to it, but this one has definitely solidified itself on my top 5 for this year at number 5. Number 4 takes me back to the 80s with the Goonies Never Say Die from Funko Games. This one is designed by Prospero Hall, and they are probably one of my favorite design studios. This team cranks the games out, but every one of their games is very unique and is really, they try to dig into whatever theme that they've chosen to go with. Most of their games are based on known IPs or like movies and games and stuff like that. So they have existing properties that they're based most of their games on, not all of them, but most of them. And each one does play very close to the way that you would expect it to play based on whatever it's working towards. For example, with the Goonies, this is a one versus many game, where most of the players are going to be controlling the Goonies, and then you'll have one player as the Goondocks Master or GM playing all the different minions and enemies and bosses, such as One-Eyed Willy, the Fratellis, the Octopus, and some others in there. And the Goondocks Master player is trying to keep the Goonies from winning or meeting their objectives for the scenario, as this is going to be a campaign game where you're going to make your way through the movie basically over, I think, 10 scenarios. And each scenario, you're going to have different things you're trying to achieve as the Goonies, and then the Goondocks Master will also have different things that he's trying to achieve to stop the Goonies from making it through that scenario. And they do a really good job of it. Every one of the scenarios is very well thought out from what I've seen so far. I haven't played through all of them, but the ones that I have played through, I've had a lot of fun and have seemed fairly balanced. Now, there is a couple of important things to point out, and I'm sure my team will disagree with this a little bit, as I've only played as the Goondocks Master, as this is my game, and I seem to be the rules guy. Well, what do you know? Learn to play games. But I think as the Goonies players, you do have a fair shot at the game if you work together. Now, that is the key part of this, is that you really need to communicate and work together as a team, planning out and strategizing how you're going to play the game. Now, this isn't like a massively thinking game where you have to really analyze everything you're doing, but it is important to go work cohesively as a team, talking about and navigating through the stage that you're playing. As the Goondocks Master, again, you're trying to stop the other players from achieving that goal by doing all kinds of different things, playing down different event cards, going and controlling the different enemies and minions that are trying to stop them from getting into different areas, or just tar pitting them in different spots if you can. But as, again, the Goonies players, there are plenty of ways of getting around that, closing off different corridors, stopping the enemies, and a number of other things. Now, it is a luck-based system as you're going to be rolling dice with each one of these encounters. So if you're somebody that's against dice, this might not be the game for you, but there are different ways of mitigating things or being able to upgrade your dice into some of the better dice that are out there, as there's 3 different color dice, D6s, D8s, and D12s, that will give you better opportunities to roll better results and whatnot as well. So depending upon the situation, you might need to upgrade. So downsides to this one, there really wasn't a whole bunch other than the stuff that I've mentioned as far as one versus many games. You always have in those games, you have the one player controlling all the enemies, and it seems like they kind of get pushed into the GM role where they're basically trying to control the environment, but not necessarily win in the game, where the other players are more focused on completing their stuff, but expecting that GM player to be more of a entertainment and keeping the game going, but ultimately the good players will win. And again, I haven't really seen a game that focuses on the one versus many that has been able to do any better at that. Some do it a little bit better than others, but this one accomplishes it pretty well. And I think as both sides have a fair chance at pulling things off. So other than that, like I said, with this one, production-wise, everything was pretty good. I would have liked a couple of things to be a little bit better, but overall, I was really pleased with this one. The miniatures are pretty good quality for a game of this level. This isn't a super expensive game, as they're trying to get this into some of the mainstream stores, such as Walmart and Target and a number of other stores, Barnes and Nobles and all that kind of stuff. So it's really cool to start seeing some of these kind of board games making their way into those areas. And the way that they are able to do that is bringing that price point down, so they have to compromise in certain areas. But overall, the quality of this game is very good. The dice are really nicely done. Cards are good stock. Boards are nice. Nothing seems to warp really horribly or anything like that. So overall, really solid. And my number 4 pick for my top 5. Moving into number 3, this is going to be Chronicles of Drunagor, Age of Darkness from Creative Game Studio. This is one that was on Kickstarter a couple years ago, and they just got to shipping earlier this year. Now, they did just do another GameFound campaign for another expansion to this that adds a whole ton of other stuff to the game, but this one came with a ton of stuff. There was so much content with this one, and this was one I had a great time working on and was really excited to get back to the table. I am a huge fan of dungeon crawlers. It's one of my favorite genres within the board gaming industry, and I have an absolute blast playing a number of them. There's so many of them. I will have to do a top 10 video at some point for dungeon crawlers, as it's one of my favorites. So really enjoy them, and always on the lookout for the next latest and greatest dungeon crawler. And this one does a great job with this one, or with that. There's a number of different things within this one that you can play. Each one of the characters plays differently and adds different strategies to the game. There's different roles that each player can choose that are going to change the way that they play, as well as different branches and paths that they can go within the different profession that they have and specialize even further. So there's a lot of different replayability and customization with each one of the characters that you play. And you're also going to have to balance out the character itself and the actions that you're taking, as each character will have a certain number of cubes that they'll be able to spend as different actions, and based on the color of that cube, that'll be able to trigger different actions. And then as the game goes on, they're going to start taking darkness that's going to block out some of those actions. So there's a lot of different choices that you're going to have to make as a player. And then they also introduced 3D elemental terrain, where you're going to have different levels of terrain that you're going to be working with, that game trays customized and made for them. And then you'll have different dungeon doors that you're going to have to open up that will reveal new things that are going to give you choices, as well as the campaign system that's in this and the different choices within that. And then there's also an interactions book where you're going to be going into different locations. And then you'll have to make choices and figure out like what different things you want to check out. And you're not going to be able to check out everything. Some locations you only be able to make one choice. And based on that choice, you'll have different outcomes as well. So there's all kinds of really cool stuff with this and a lot of replayability with it. Now, there are a couple of downsides with this one. The book for this one, the rules are massive. This is not a light game by any means, but a lot of dungeon crawlers aren't. There's a lot of details with them, and this one has a number of rules that they go into quite extensively. So having a bigger rulebook isn't necessarily bad, but it definitely can be a little overwhelming for early or beginning players or players that aren't as familiar with some of these games. I am intending to do a teaching video for this one. Was one that I was hoping to work on a little while back and just have not had the time. So know that that is coming at some point. So you'll get to look forward to that if you have this, or if you decided to back the new one and have some of that stuff coming in or some of this stuff coming in, I will have something for that. Now, on the downsides to this one, I was a little disappointed with game trays on this. Normally they do an excellent job, but it seems like with this one, either they rushed it, didn't have the time to complete certain things, or just misengineered some of the stuff, as some of the trays seem weird, the way that they have different things placed. The token tray itself cannot fit all the tokens in it and will simply just pop open and stuff like that. So there was a couple of things that I had issues with there. I probably would have just preferred other things since they went ahead and did it this way. And I don't know where that falls. And I don't know if that's a big deal to you or not, but that was one of the negatives that I saw with this particular one that I figured I would point out. Other than that, though, like I said, the miniature quality is pretty good with this. The production was very well done. Everything came out really nice. The tokens and everything feel really cool. And there's so many different elements to this that I could talk about that would probably take, 20 minutes to cover. So I don't want to bore you with all that, but there's a lot to this one. If you're looking for a solid, heavy dungeon crawler, this is definitely one I would recommend. And I love the theme. As always, I love medieval stuff. So this one definitely checked a lot of the boxes for mine. And that's why it made my number 3 on my list. My number 2 straps me into my dropship aboard the Sulaco as I get ready to deploy onto planet LV-426 to face an unknown threat in Aliens Another Glorious Day in the Core from Gale Force 9. This is one I've had on my radar for a long time and was super excited to get to the table, as I'm a big Aliens fan. I love the movie and the franchise, and I could not wait to get a solid Aliens game or Aliens miniatures game to the board. And I was really hoping that they were going to nail it with this one, and I was not disappointed. They did a great job. I get to play as any of the Marines that I want to from the core, whether it's Hicks, Hudson, Vasquez, and a number of other ones, and even the expansion adds all the ones that are not included in the core game. And this one does a great job. It definitely gives you that tension and feel, as you're going to have a deck of cards that you're going to have to manage, so it's going to count as both your ammo and your life force. And if you ever completely run out of that deck, then you have lost the mission that you're playing. And this can be played in one of two different ways. You can play it as a one-off mission or a full campaign, where the different choices you make are going to impact later missions, where you can potentially lose Marines from your squad being captured by aliens or defeated, and then they will not return as you progress in that campaign. Or you could do rescue missions where you could go and potentially save them, or you might have to go do an ammo run and a number of other things as you make your way to hopefully leaving LV-426 and nuking it from orbit just to be safe. So downsides with this one, there's not many. The rules are a little touchy in certain areas. There's a couple of things that are unclear. I would have liked them to clean up line of sight just a little bit better and some stuff like that. But overall, very, very solid game. And there's not much else I can think of. Again, the miniatures are beautiful. There was a couple of issues. Again, if you're not a miniatures person, you do have to assemble these. You have to cut them off of their sprues and assemble them. Did not bother me, as I love miniatures, and I'm again, my history is Warhammer, so I'm used to cutting and gluing and putting things together. I cleaned off all of the mold lines on these, which are the mold lines when you press a sprue together. It's the two halves that create a line around the model. So I did go crazy and clean all of them in hopes that at some point I will paint them, and so I won't have all those lines showing up after I've painted them. Who knows if I'll actually get to it, but sometimes it's just fun to do that as well. Anyways, that is what you're going to have to look at if you decide to get this game. You are going to have to assemble the models, and some people don't like that or are not familiar with that. And as you notice, I still don't have the tails on my aliens. In my teaching video, I did say that I am going to show you how to magnetize those, as I'm going to do that so that they're stored easier in the box, and I still plan on doing that. I actually did pick up the magnets to them, so I have not forgotten about that. And my number one pick, the top game on my list, is Bloodborne, the board game from Come Games. This is one that as soon as it got to the table, I fell in love with and knew if I was going to make one of these videos, it was going to be the top game by a long shot. This one really captured my attention. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that I did not play the video game beforehand, so I didn't have that attachment where I knew the world and I fell in love with it that way. I actually played the video game after playing this board game, as I really wanted to learn more about the lore and see what this was all about on the video game side of things. So I did not go into this with that interest based on the IP itself. I love this game for the mechanics of it. I really liked the dungeon crawling aspects to it. The miniatures are really well done, and I love the way that you can customize your hunter as you play through a scenario. So each hunter is going to have a deck of cards that they're going to start the game with that's pre-constructed. And then as the game goes on, as they gather different points, they're going to be able to spend those when they go to the hunter's dream to purchase new cards that they're going to add to their deck and then discard other cards. So as the game goes on, you're going to be constantly adding and removing cards, as you can only have 13 cards in your deck at any time. And so you're going to really have to tailor the way that you play to that deck of cards. And I love that aspect of it because you can definitely tailor it to your play style, depending upon the hunter that you've chosen, and really start making some fun combos and different things that really give you that feel of being a complete badass and being able to go in there and go up against monsters and destroy them, hopefully, and then manage things very well. And it is very punishing, as the monsters are going to get in attacks, they're going to do damage to you, and you're going to have to make tough decisions about when to go back to the hunter's dream, as that's going to progress the scenario you're playing as well, and will shorten that amount of time that you have to complete it. So there's a lot of different balancing within that. Now, one of the few drawbacks with this one is that some of the stuff is random as far as the way that the tiles come out and that. So there's certain times where the tiles will come out in your favor, where you're going to be able to meet a number of those objectives early in the mission, where you're going to have a little bit more time to make your way through that and achieve your end goal, where other times you might have the very last tile come out and that's one of the objectives you needed. So it just depends on how the tiles come out with some of that, in whether or not you might have a better game or a bad game. Again, you can mitigate some of that, and some of it you're just going to have to move through and deal with as the game goes on, and that's part of the difficulty of that. But that was one of the really only drawbacks that I have experienced so far. I've played through a couple of campaigns now so far and was very successful in one, and the other one I was successful all the way up till the last mission, and that was when I got destroyed by the boss. So I'm hoping to do some more coverage on this one at some points, but this is definitely my top pick for this year, and would highly recommend this game to anyone that enjoys these style games. If you like miniature-based games, if you like dungeon crawlers, if you like fully cooperative games, this is definitely one I would give a look to, as this is definitely the one that I have just absolutely fell in love with. So that is my top 5 for this year. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this and all of that. I will have a couple of honorable mentions after this, games that almost made my list, but not quite for one reason or another, which I will cover in just a second. So let's go ahead and head into there and see what those are. So my first honorable mention is Ankh from Come Games. This is one that I've been waiting for a long time, and one of the main reasons why it didn't get higher on my top 5 list or make my top 5 list is I've only had a chance to get it to the table once. So I didn't really want to base everything on one play experiences. I like to dig into them a little bit more before I would consider putting them on a list. So with this one, this is again designed by Eric Lang and is part of his trilogy of games that started with Blood Rage and then went to Rising Sun and now Ankh. And each one of these has been refined and has some different mechanics within it, but the same kind of basic themes of competitive play, where you're going to be working against each other in different ways, or potentially cooperating in different ways to get the most points to be the winner at the end of the game. And each one of them, so far that I've seen, has been balanced very well, and I've really enjoyed playing all 3 of them. So this one was kind of the culmination of the series and was one that I was really excited about. But again, for this particular video, the only reason it didn't really make it to the list yet is because I have not had a chance to really play it beyond that first time. So I wanted to dig into it more before having it go higher on my list. The other honorable mention I have is Enchanters. This one was re-released from Mythic Games and was kickstarted a number of years back, and they had this one they were running demos of this one at this year's Gen Con, and I really enjoy it. So I've had a chance to play it a few times since. It's very easy to learn and teach, but there's a lot of variety within this one. There's tons of different factions and other different little modules you can add on, such as overlords and quests, wound cards, and all kinds of other things that will continue to add variety and replayability to this game. There's even a cooperative mode that's included in it. I haven't had a chance to really try that out too much. My experience so far hasn't been too great with that, but I haven't had a chance to dig into it more, so hopefully that'll be good, as I really enjoy cooperative games and it's a lot easier for me to get those to the table so that I can play those a little bit more. But this was definitely one that I had a lot of fun with, and if you're into competitive card games, this is definitely one I would check out, and I had a great time with it. I do have a teaching video that I'll have a link to down below if you'd like to check that out as well. All right, so that wraps up my list for this year's top 5 games that I've had a chance to play. Again, you'll find the full list of games that I played this year or that were in contention for this list in the comments section down below. Let me know what you think of this, and let me know some feedback on this video. This is definitely something completely new for me, so let me know what you think of this, if I was just completely off of the hinge and rambled the whole time, or if you found any value to this at all. Let me know in the comments down below. Let me know if you'd like to see other videos like this. And like I said, once I get that other game for aliens, then I might look at doing that list. So let me know if that's something you'd like to see, or if there's other lists that you would be interested in seeing from me. I'm always open to hearing from you. I love starting conversations and love to hear from you in the comments down below. So, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my videos and leave me feedback on them. I do really appreciate it, and take into account everything you say to make the best possible videos. And until next time, I'll see you later.